Hi, everybody. This is Katrina Peters, School Nutrition Services Manager with the Nevada Department of Agriculture. Today, we're going to present a quick webinar on our Breakfast After the Bell grant applications. So to briefly cover today's agenda, we're going to talk about how to use the web-based grant application system and talk about some resources that are posted on that website. We're going to talk about what items are eligible for grant funding, and that's items that are needed to implement SB 503, Breakfast After the Bell. And we're going to go into pretty in-depth step-by-step instructions on how to complete a grant application. And we're really hoping that this online system will be easy to use and aid folks in entering in a successful grant application. Just to briefly go over some quick housekeeping. Our webinar today is being recorded. We'll stop the recording before we do question and answer, and we'll be posting that recording to our YouTube channel. So if you have other staff members you want to share this with, we'll be sending out this link and you'll be able to access the webinar at any point in time on our YouTube channel. As I said, we'll answer questions at the end, and those won't be recorded, so please feel free to ask any questions you have. We're really here to just provide technical assistance on this process. After the webinar, please contact NDA to obtain a login if you don't already have one. As this is our second year of grants, most folks that I see as attendees are already familiar with the system, but if you need to add someone or remove someone, just contact us and we can do that real easily. We also have a manual on how to use the grant application website, and we'll distribute that along with user logins, so please connect with us if you needed a copy of that. To talk briefly about who's eligible to apply. All schools that are at currently 70% or greater free or reduced lunch eligibility, and that's based on the eligibility percentages posted in this current school year's free and reduced eligibility report. We did send out letters earlier in the month to every school that's eligible, and we notified them that they'll be required to implement Breakfast After the Bell, which hopefully they were already familiar with from last year, and also letting them know that they're eligible for a grant. So this past school year that's just wrapping up, grant applications were open to folks who had not served breakfast after the start of the school day and were 70% or greater. And in the coming school year, because those schools who hadn't done it had an opportunity to get that grant funding, we're now opening it up to every school that's 70% or greater. So last year it was sort of a more select list of folks who were eligible. This year it's open to everyone who's 70% or greater. And again, letters went out notifying eligible schools to each principal, and also a letter to each superintendent was sent capturing that list of schools. The grant application is pre-populated for all schools that qualify. So if you get in there and don't see a school, please connect with us, but that's likely due to them not meeting that 70% eligibility requirement. We also have a list of eligible schools posted on our website. So I've provided that link there for you to be able to access that information if you want to see not only your district, but all districts statewide that are eligible are on there, so you can see it all in one snapshot. Grants are going to be open for submissions as soon as the webinar is over. And we've preloaded all those eligible schools so folks can go ahead and get in there and get started on that process. Grants are going to be due July 15th at the end of the day. That's a Friday, so sort of the end of the workday Friday will be our due date for those. And we really want to encourage folks to get in and get them submitted as soon as possible. We wanted to talk briefly about what's eligible for grant funding. At the beginning of last year, we had a whole host of questions, and we want to sort of hone folks in on what items are eligible so you don't waste time trying to chase stuff down for quotes on items that won't be eligible. So really at a basic level, activities to support the implementation of SB 503 are eligible for grant funding. Some examples could be kitchen equipment like milk coolers, ovens, or hot holding equipment, labor to serve additional breakfasts. What we've seen last year in schools serving breakfast after the bell is a huge increase in the number of meals served, which is exciting, and really the whole reason for this legislation is to get meals to kids that need them. And we know that there could be some additional labor costs with preparing and serving those additional breakfasts. If you do want to include labor in your grant application, we want to make sure folks understand that timesheets will be required for reimbursement. So we'll need some documentation to be able to reimburse those costs. There's also the possibility to apply for equipment needed to set up additional breakfast points of service. So we've seen folks ask for mobile point of service cards, laptops to have an additional point of service. With those additional meals, it can really streamline meal service to have those extra points of service. We also have a list of suggested equipment on our SB 503 grant webpage, so that can give you some ideas of what some of that equipment looks like, especially for breakfast in the classroom. So we've asked districts who have been successful in implementing breakfast in the classroom, what kind of equipment have you needed, and we kind of captured that in a document to help give folks some examples of what some of those common needs are. I can't emphasize this next point enough for principals who are listening and thinking about what kind of plan they're going to make to implement SB 503. It's absolutely critical you connect with your school food service staff when you're making that plan. We want to make sure that you're working in tandem with your school food service folks. Maybe that's your district school food service director, maybe that's your cafeteria manager, maybe that's all of the above. So please reach out to those folks and make sure that you're working with them when you're developing this plan on implementing breakfast after the bell. Also, this varies quite a bit by district, but if your district has a grants coordinator or a grants manager, please connect with them also. They've been such a huge part in making this grant successful last year, and it's really critical you connect with that person at your district level before pursuing a grant application. We know that some districts don't necessarily have a designated grants person, but for those larger districts, those folks have been again, a huge help. And if you're confused about who your district grants coordinator is, please shoot us an email, and we're happy to try to connect you with those folks. And same with the food service director. If you don't know who that is or who to connect with first, let us know and we'll get you guys connected. Okay, to really dive into that online grant application, the first step is going to be logging into the system. So up top in pink, we've got the URL for you to click on to access that website. And we also have a snapshot of what that homepage looks like. So we assign folks a username and password, and that enables you to log in and get that specific to your district. And if you have any issues with your login, please contact the Food Nutrition Division, and we can help if you either don't have access or you've had access before and you're having challenges logging back in. So once you enter in your email and your password into that main site, that's our first step. We have functionality built in there if you forgot your password, and this is really similar to a lot of other online web applications where you need a username and password. If you click on that forgot your password, it'll reset your password and automatically email you your new password. So if it's just a forgotten password but you've had access before, give that a try first and see if that'll help get you logged in. Okay, next we're going to dive into the application submission. So once you log in successfully, this first screen that you're going to see is what we've been calling the dashboard. And this is sort of the one-stop shop for either submitting an application or checking on the status of an application you've already submitted. To dive a little deeper, those colorful tabs on the top, we'll kind of go through them one by one to show what you can do with each of those tabs. So the first one on the far left is schools, and that tab is going to list all eligible schools in your district, and this is where you're going to go ahead and start. The next one is the Open tab. So under the Open tab, you can access any applications that you started but haven't quite yet submitted. So if you click on schools, and we'll show you in more detail the next steps, you get halfway through an application and you just sort of pause and come back. When you come back, you're going to get into that Open tab. Submitted is going to show any applications that have already been submitted that are awaiting NDA review and approval. And we'll talk in more depth, but once they get into submitted, you'll have to connect with us to be able to make any changes. So we want to make sure that you're solid on that application when you hit submit. The next tab is the denied tab. So if an application was denied for any reason, or if you needed to make a modification, you would click on that tab to access that. And anytime anything goes into the denied category, if you've selected to receive email updates, it'll send you an automated email when it moves over into that denied tab. The next one is reviewed. So those are applications that are awaiting NDA approval. It has to go through a two-step process to get approved, and that's kind of where they sit until we complete that process. And then hopefully everyone's application makes it over into the green approved tab. So that green tab is going to show all completed and approved applications. And once your application is approved and it moves over to that tab, you'll also receive an automated email to the person whose email address has been provided. Okay, so that was kind of an overview of our dashboard. Now we're going to walk through the steps to actually submit an application. So to view the list of eligible schools, you're going to go ahead and click on that schools button on that left-hand side. You can also search for a particular school using that application search box. So if you're at, West Wendover, you're going to go ahead and type in West Wendover, and that'll just pop that school right up for you. Here's a screenshot of what the schools tab looks like. So folks that have multiple schools that are eligible in that district, we've taken a screenshot of Washoe here so you can see their list of eligible schools, and it just lists them all down. You'll go ahead and click on the school for the application that you want to work on. And this will pull up the individual school application. So there's several fields here where you'll be asked to enter information. Some of it is a drop-down, so you can select from kind of some preset options. But at a really basic level, it's going to be asking you for some contact information, and that's both for the breakfast program contact information, so typically that would be a school food service director. Then it's going to also ask for a grant or a fiscal contact. So that'll be likely that grants coordinator, grants manager, but really we just want folks to enter in information however it suits your district best. Next, it's going to ask you a few questions, the first of which is describing your challenges to implementation. Next, it's going to ask you for a plan to summarize how you plan to implement breakfast after the bell and utilize your grant funds and utilize those items you're asking grant funds for. And then it's also going to ask you to describe how success will be measured. So it's a pretty streamlined grant application, but we do need this basic information. Once you're done, you'll go ahead and click the Save button at the bottom. And we also have a section in our RFA, and we will be posting that RFA on the grant website. There's some tips for optimal grant language included in that RFA. So we sort of gave examples of what not enough content looks like or insufficient content, and then gave examples of what sufficient content does look like. The RFA is new this year. One of our districts asked why we didn't do an RFA, which we really had to scratch our heads on since that was such a good idea. And we just sort of made a mental note of that. We did make an RFA this year, so we hope that helps folks with a document that has all the information gathered in one place. Okay, here's a screenshot of our contact information. There's, again, two areas. One, we're looking for a program contact. That's likely going to be the food service director or cafeteria manager. The next one is a grant or fiscal contact. And we want folks to sort of hone in on those two check boxes to the side. So there you can opt to either receive status updates or you can opt out. So you can uncheck that box if you don't want to get those automated emails, especially the really large districts that may have one contact person. They would get an email each time the status changed for one school, so we didn't want to flood people's inbox if they'd rather not do that. Okay, the next section is for the budget, and there are 6 budget categories. The first is personnel, so that's going to be hourly costs for labor. The next is fringe benefits, so that's those fringe benefits, health insurance, contributions that the employer kicks in, capture those in that category. The next is travel. If folks were interested in traveling to another district to sort of observe how they were implementing breakfast after the bell, we wanted to make that option available. We have an equipment tab, and we define equipment as $5,000 or more, so a per item value of $5,000 or more, unless your district has a lower amortization threshold. It's a tough word. We also have supplies, so those would be things that are less than $5,000. We've seen folks ask for things like bun pans, sheet trays, mobile carts to aid in delivery. Those types of items would be in supplies. And then we also have a miscellaneous category, so that's sort of a catch-all for anything that wouldn't have fit in any of the previous 5 categories. And again, you can access that by clicking on those top tabs. In the personnel section of the budget, we want you to enter the staff person by title, the hourly rate, and the number of hours per week. So there's a little description box, and that's what we'd like you to capture in that particular section. Next, we've got a fringe tab, and that looks very similar to the personnel tab. And along a really same idea, we want you to enter the staff person by title, their hourly fringe rate, and the number of hours per week. If the staff members don't receive any fringe, you can just go ahead and enter 0 on this one. Next, we have a travel tab. So you'd want to enter in some information on the details of that trip, like the destination, the purpose, staff members that'll be attending, and we need a budget. We need sort of per item amounts on that to be able to approve that. Next, we have an equipment tab, and again, these are items as we define it in federal programs, items that cost more than $5,000 each. So that's not $5,000 total, it's $5,000 per oven or $5,000 per refrigerator. And you'll want to just enter in a description of that piece of equipment. Next is supplies, and we want you to just itemize the supplies needed and put a dollar amount on that. The last one is that miscellaneous category. So that's sort of a catch-all if folks wanted to do something like a survey on preferred menu items, if you wanted to purchase some breakfast promotional materials, you'd enter in those types of items under that miscellaneous tab. Okay, once you get to budget, you're going to go ahead and click on that purple review application packet. So once you click on that tab, that's going to initiate a screen that's going to show your entire submission. And we want folks to really review those and ensure that they are complete and correct. So here's a screenshot of what the screen will show once you hit that submit button. I'm sorry, that review application button. And this is, again, your opportunity to sort of review all that information and make sure everything's correct. Once you hit submit, the application is then closed. It moves over into that review tab, and you won't be able to modify any of the information on it. So if you do, after you already hit submit, realize that you do need to make any changes, contact us and we can kick that back over into the denied category so you can make some modifications if need be. Okay, once the application is submitted, you're going to see this message in the green box, and that lets you know that you got everything all the way to submitted. So just know that unless that green box pops up, you haven't made it all the way through to a full submission. And again, once you hit that submit button, you won't be able to edit or change it unless you contact us. So if you accidentally hit submit or you realize you need to make a change before the due date, let us know and we can help you out with that. You'll be able to see the ones that you've submitted under that Submitted Applications tab. So that'll kind of show you things that have made it all the way through the process. Okay, now it's over to NDA for review and approval. And hopefully everyone's applications that are submitted are approved, and at that point in time you'll be able to see it under the Approve button on the dashboard. And again, unless you've opted out of receiving notifications, you'll get an automatic email when your application's approved. We'll also be sending grant award letters along with our typical sub-grant award, but this automated system will notify you sort of as soon as we hit that final approval button. You can also check the status at the bottom of the application. So here highlighted in that purple box is the very bottom of the application that shows a grant application that's been approved. If you have a grant application that's denied, you'll pull that out of that red Denied tab, and in the notes section at the bottom of that application, it'll give you some details on why that was denied. So if you've contacted us and said, I forgot to add an item, we'll be punching that in the notes and you'll be able to sort of see that application by application. Okay. You can see at a glance all your schools, whether you've submitted an application or not, under that Schools tab, and it will tell you the status. So in that purple box, we've highlighted that status column. Hopefully folks can see that. It's a little tiny on my screen. And it'll show you where each application is in the process. Once you click on the school name, it'll bring up a saved application if you started one, or a blank application if one hasn't been started yet. So if you're in a larger district with multiple schools, this Schools tab can help you see at a glance where each school's application is. Once the application is approved, grant funds will be dispersed on a reimbursement basis. So this isn't a grant where we provide funds up front. This is on a reimbursement basis, meaning you'll have to submit a reimbursement request and all the appropriate documentation to get that reimbursement. And I think just sort of the most important part of that is with labor. So we want to make sure folks understand that we'll need to capture some time accountability mechanism to be able to reimburse those labor costs. And we do need backup documentation on all items. So things like an invoice or a purchase order, we'll need those to be able to reimburse those funds. We can do an advance if one is needed. We'll need you to fill out some paperwork to request that advance. So if you fall into that category, please contact us directly and we can walk you through that process. Okay, I wanted to briefly touch on some frequently asked questions. We've had some folks ask, can schools serve breakfast before and after the bell? And the answer to that question is yes. The legislation requires that breakfast be available to all students after the instructional school day has officially begun. You can also offer breakfast before the school day starts if you wanted to do so. So we know, like in a middle and high school environment, there may be different things going on that really students would benefit from having a breakfast option before the school day started as well as after. If you submit an application but you want to change it, please contact us and we can reject that so that you can make any edits. And we've got our central line here. You can also contact me directly, and I've got my contact information on the last slide. If folks are experiencing some pushback from administrators on implementing breakfast after the bell, we have a frequently asked questions document on the NDA website, and we provided the link there. It's just some basic information on options and different ways that this particular breakfast after the bell can be implemented. We also have put out the blanket offer that we're available to answer any questions, attend any meetings, or present any information if requested. So we're happy to go to a principal's meeting or a superintendent meeting, or even meet with principals on an individual school level if that's helpful for you. We really want to see districts be successful in implementing this, and it can be a challenge. So we want to let folks know that we're here to be a resource and help you be successful. If you're stuck in the application and need help, please contact us directly. We are happy to log in and see where you're at and get you where you want to be. Okay, with that, we will go ahead and pause our recording and take any questions folks have.